Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, it's a very tight turn for an entrepreneur to switch from selling stationery to dealing in oil. But that is the story we'll be looking into this week. Now, the fuel game is a tough one. It's been called an old boys club, and it proved irresistible for this week's guest, Rajen Reddy. He suffered setbacks along the way. His first month of trading in stationery along the way brought him a mere handful of dollars in profit. He'll tell us about that, but he persevered and won through. How did he do it? Well, he's in the studio with us to share now his remarkable story. Thank you for coming on the show. Now, you tell me that it was your grandfather who was the great entrepreneur in your family. You grew up in Howick, a small place outside Durban in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Just tell us what sort of a man he was and how he inspired you.
Yeah, I think fortunately for me, I had this pleasure. My dad's family is quite a big family, actually 15 in all, But spending a little bit of time, but there was something special about my grandfather, apart from him being in the construction industry. And earlier in his life, he actually taught Zulu to our African colleagues, and directly opposite where Mandela got arrested, strangely enough. But he ended up being in the construction industry, and also he did wood and coal business. But he owned a lot of land, but he came as a self-made man. But whenever he walked, he sort of had this aura about him, special.
What did he used to tell you when you were a child that you think turned you on to being an entrepreneur?
But when I went with him, he drove his own van at that time, the sheriff van. And when he went into Howick, which is the town, and we stayed in Howick West, and that. But the way he would dress in khaki uniform, the way he would, speak, and his command of the language, and he read the paper. But, having 8 sons, and my dad, of course, is one of the sons, but he marshaled the troop. Everything around him was prim and proper. And he just inspired you.
Do you have any good entrepreneurial sayings to you remember in your business today?
This was I was quite young at that time. I think I was more privileged to sit with him because nobody was allowed to sit with him even when he had a meal. It was always, shouting at someone or to get this done. But for some reason, he just had this aura, like I said, about him. But his accomplishment was extremely fantastic, from rags to riches, as they would say, with all that he's accumulated in property and things. So I think that when you saw what he owned, I think you wanted to be like him.
But you matriculated in 1980, and not surprising, you went to the family building business.
Yes.
But that wasn't enough to you. There was a day when you saw an opportunity as you were driving along the road.
Yes.
Just tell us about that.
Well, being in the building industry myself, and North Coast Road in the old days, that's what it was called, but it's Chris Hani now, and I saw them taking out some tanks in a service station, a Shell service station, that was actually owned by Corobrick. And I inquired about this, what's happening here, it's closing down, and the site is expropriated, and we're going to get ready for the road expansion. And I said, man, that will never happen, very shortly. And I saw this opportunity because I cannot explain, but this dream was to have a service station because I love motor mechanics and cars at that time. And I went and managed to persuade our municipality, the Tequini municipality, and convinced that gentleman. I literally groveled to be given this opportunity because I know there'll be no goodwill or whatever it is. But to cut a long story short, I managed to get this deal in 88 at 1,200 Rand. And I didn't want to tell many people about that I got the whole service station for 1,200 Rand rental.
Which wasn't that much money even in those days.
Believe you me. I mean, you don't get that, yes.
But your business model interests me because it wasn't just selling fuel, was it? You had other ways of raising money. What exactly did you do?
No, let us keep it a bit true and honest. I didn't have enough working capital. So I saw that, I could run the forecourt And I think the embarrassing thing was to try and convince my father-in-law, to get some working capital. But maybe that we'll talk about another day. But so I said, let me generate some income here. I rented out most of the place, a loop bay and a workshop and all those kind of things. I think I made more money out of being a slumlord, a landlord, and then, got the business going. And then slowly I took over, the loop bays and selling LPG and things like that. Yeah. So that was my introduction into that.
But like a lot of the entrepreneurs we get on this show, you source the capital from your family.
Yes.
How difficult was that?
Extremely difficult. A real finance house and institution they don't look for, too friendly on people like us that got dreams, and because we talk with more passion and emotion than a business plan. An entrepreneur is a difficult person to get him to write a business plan as such. But it was extremely challenging. I still know how to fill that Standard Bank's cash flow projection document. Every time I wanted an extra kind of a bit of working capital, I had to go and fill this cash flow document. But I suppose we did have different challenges now, but it was extremely.
It must have been quite difficult, but somebody once said to me that if you borrow from a bank, all right, the conditions are harsh and
yes.
They'll always ask for their money back eventually. He said, but sometimes you borrow from family, they're around next week saying, oh, what are you doing? Where's the money? Can I have it back? Is that the way it is?
I don't think one should be too moderate. I still get that thrown in with the wife says, my father started you off in business, So I suppose,
it's all part of the joy that is family. Nonetheless, do you think if it wasn't for your grandfather, that day when you drove past that service station, that you might have just got him back in your car and driven on and forgotten about it, if it wasn't for him?
Absolutely. I mean, because North Coast Road was one of the main roads. Just like me, thousands, and I'm not exaggerating, 1,000 people travel there up till today. And, we even bought off coral brick buildings, so that's how bad it is, And
what were the difficulties, though? I mean, it sounds all too good to be true, what
yes.
you were doing with the service station. What
yes.
were the difficulties?
I think you got to be honest with yourself, and entrepreneurs do that when you're alone. And yes, everything was a challenge. Your limited knowledge, but there's something that drives you. You want to make it happen at all costs, and I think that's what that's the difference between what you say an entrepreneur and a CEO. I always say a CEO is a bit of a caretaker.
But then again, the next entrepreneurial opportunity you saw was in 1996. South Africa was changing, and there were plans to open up the fuel industry to the general population, and you saw an opportunity there. Now, how did you go about that?
Well, I think, being an opportunist like what we are as entrepreneurs, I got a bit of insight that the oil industry was going to change. And I was actually, that thought was put into my head by a gentleman by the name of Siyabonga Gama. And he was a junior person at Standard Bank, and he was seconded to the port of Durban. And so at that time we were busy with what was called RDP, a Reconstruction and Development Program. And then BEE came on there. And I think that was the best thing that happened to our country, which was black economic empowerment, because it gave us an opportunity to address the imbalances and the structures, the financial institutions. Certain race groups, had a background into business. And so it was just this uphill battle continuously, and we saw that opportunity, and government thought that they could put enough pressure on big business to open up these opportunities. It didn't really work, and doesn't work too well today, but we got BBBEE today. But at that time, so government said, why don't we take our business that we give out to the oil majors and then channel it through, black empowerment companies. And I think that was really fantastic. But where we were slightly different with BEE is that we went with the mentorship program, not the affirmative action, what you got today, and where you got a procurement policy that says, yes, you can go out and do it. But The nice thing about government those days, they came in as your partner. So we walked into the oil company, and because the oil company didn't want to give us an appointment anyway, so you walk in there and then you say, okay, fine, I've got my customer here, this is the volumes that they do, and they would like us to supply them. And so they look at you squint eyes because it's their business now. Now you are muscling in because of this funny BEE, and now you want a piece of the action, you want a piece of the pie. So that doesn't go down very well. But nevertheless, be that it is, but the volumes were good. And as we say in our business, volume buys the whiskey. So when you got volume, you
But it took you a couple of years to actually finally get in, and during that time you opened, strangely enough, a stationery business. Why did you do that?
There's something called, when you're desperate, you do anything. Now, believe you me, and I'm honest about this, I still don't know about stationery up till today, but I used a trick. I would tell them now, if you don't want me to make a mistake, you give me a sample of what you want. And I used to take that sample and run around and get suppliers and whatever and that is what I would do, because you don't know your product. So I just knew what a pen and a ruler, a stapler, the general things. But unfortunately, stationery's got thousands of items.
When you were sort of like, how dare we say it, fumbling in this business, what sort of funny stories and things must have been hectic?
I did my first month's turnover, massive turnover, 982 Rand. And we were privileged to have a 10% markup, and we took 92 Rand, kind of profit.
And what did you do with that 92 Rand in that month?
It was insulting, but I'm going to tell you this quickly. I had a partner, Simeon in Ndlovu, and he said, because it was in Ndlovu and Reddy distributors, so I was the Reddy part, and he was the Ndlovu part. So he says, Raj, I need to, come in the business now. And I said, no problem. You can come into the business, right? So I said, okay, now you go pick up this stationery and you deliver it. So it's fine. Never saw him for a couple of days. Port phones back and say, you know what, you haven't delivered the goods. No, it's done. So eventually I get hold of my partner and I say, what happened here? He says, I don't want to do that business. So I said, no, but okay, fine. But where's the stationery? He says, well, my canopy flew off, stationery flew off on the road, and that was the end of my partner. So, but it was, when you're trying to put and keep the fires burning, we did about a good turnover in the end, about 250, 280,000 Rand a month. Coming from that, yes.
We'll hold that thought there. In the second half, we're going to talk about your final arrival into the oil business. We're talking to Rajen Reddy, the CEO of KZN Oils. We're going to a short break now. We'll see you right after this. Stay with us.